Hey guys, today we're going to be navigating around to random waypoints in Manteca, California with the new update of Full Self-Driving Beta, which is version 9.1. This was a pretty good drive that had a lot of unprotected turns and interesting scenarios, and although the beta wasn't always a perfect driver, it's interesting to see how it's progressing. Before we start, I'd also like to mention that the ultra-wide camera you'll see used in this video is mounted in a very similar location to the B-pillar cameras. So what you see from there should be pretty close to what Autopilot is able to see. And we're off to our first waypoint, which is the Supercharger on Spreckles Avenue. I will be fast forwarding through the majority of this video and only switching to real time when there's something noteworthy happening. We are approaching our first right at a red light, which also happens to have a fence obstructing the view of incoming traffic quite a bit. Autopilot creeps forward a little bit to get more visibility, but still a pretty tough view with that fence in the way. I think the creeping behavior in this update has been improved significantly, which you'll see better examples of later on in this video. Creeping a little more forward, we're basically creeped up all the way to where I would be as a human driver, just far enough not to obstruct traffic. Autopilot waits for the car across the intersection from us to complete his left turn, and then proceeds. Coming up here, the lane we're in splits into two separate lanes in a pretty confusing way, and in situations like this, FSD Beta 8 struggled quite a bit with making a decision on a lane, and usually made some crazy steering inputs, but I think Beta 9.1 actually handles this one really well. Also think it's pretty interesting to point out that even though we're surrounded by cars at this light right now, it seems like it's actually able to visualize oncoming traffic a few lanes over really well. I don't know exactly how it was doing this, but it is pretty cool to see. In a few moments, we will be making the turn into the target parking lot to get to the Supercharger, and parking lots are definitely something that previous versions of the beta struggled with quite a bit. I think once Smart Summon and the city streets beta get merged, we'll see some really big improvements in this area. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet, but let's go ahead and see how version 9.1 does. First, we have an unprotected left turn to get us into this parking lot. As you can see, there is a car directly in front of us that's kind of obstructing the view of oncoming lanes. So the beta was a little slow to proceed here. I think it was just trying to be extra safe, but does get us in the parking lot nicely. We then have a super tight right-hand turn to make with the car in the way, and you'll actually see the beta turn the steering wheel left for a moment in order to position the car to clear this curb. I was super impressed with this. Version 9 seems to do a lot better job of knowing where the car is on the road and staying away from curbs that can cause damage. You probably also did see my hand there. A few have left comments to say it's actually me driving in all of these videos, but I assure you that it is the beta driving. I just want my hands to be ready to take over at a moment's notice in case it gets too close to anything. It also did go down the wrong parking row. The Supercharger was one more to the right, but close enough, I guess. New random destination set in the nav. Let's see if it can get us out of here. Another pretty tight area here. I feel like parking lots are definitely still uncomfortable for the beta, and I feel the steering wheel jerkiness a lot more in places like this than anywhere else, which I guess is understandable because parking lots can be a pretty rough place to drive. Seems like Autopilot was ready to proceed through this right turn, but then cancels it right away when it realizes it's not going to be able to swing narrow enough to miss the truck approaching from the right. Technically, the lady to the left has the right-of-way here, and she does have enough room to go in front of me, but she ends up waving for us to go ahead instead. Autopilot swinging a bit wide here. I think it may have mistaken the parking row on the left for the left turn we're supposed to be making right now, but I'm not sure. We do get a bit lucky here and have no approaching traffic from the left or right, and Autopilot just creeps through this entire thing and never actually stops. This did feel pretty human-like, honestly. If you're enjoying what you see so far, please interact with this video in some way by leaving a comment or a like, or both if you're feeling generous. I hate asking for likes, but video interactions really do go a long way to help promote my content to new audiences that otherwise wouldn't see it. And as always, thank you so much for watching my videos. That alone really is the best support you can give me. So this is an interesting one. This appears just to be like any other right turn at a red light, but for some reason autopilot doesn't want to proceed by itself and asks me to confirm it's okay. So I did wait as long as I possibly could to see if it would do it by itself, but it never did, and I ended up having to press the autopilot stalk for it to make it through this light. Coming up, you'll see a situation where the path planning seems to have gotten a bit better. We have road markings ahead that swerve to the left abruptly, and instead of trying to stay center in the lane the entire time, the Beta actually drives over the double yellow line to smooth out the turn, just like a human would. The path planning really has gotten better and better with every single update, but still not perfect. I think the craziest thing about these updates is just how normal they feel after only a few short drives. I don't even really realize how much better version 9 has gotten until I look back at some of my version 8 videos and see how insanely jerking the steering wheel was. It's pretty crazy to me that on my 120-mile daily commute, my car drives over 90% of the time, and the only time I take over to drive myself is when I'm in a big hurry to get somewhere, or the Beta is making some kind of mistake. Speaking of which, you are about to see the Beta make a pretty big mistake. We are approaching a stopped truck with the trailer, and autopilot doesn't take the oncoming car into consideration soon enough, and ends up trying to go around a bit too early. But then something amazing happens. The Beta realizes it's made a mistake and actually turns back towards the trailer, essentially getting us stuck, but clearing the road for oncoming traffic. I then sit here as long as possible to see if the Beta would maybe try to shift into reverse to get us out of here, but it's not happening. I end up taking over, reversing a bit, and giving it one more chance. A lot of people will probably not like what they just saw, but I thought it was actually really impressive. I've said this before and will stand by it. I think what's truly going to propel the Beta to the next level is when it starts handling the mistakes it makes with grace, and to me, this was a giant step towards that dream. I think it will be impossible to have an autonomous car never make any mistakes. Instead, what's more important is how it deals with them once they happen, and I think this encounter was exciting because although it did get stuck, it cleared the path of oncoming traffic, and all it really would have had to do is back up and try again once it's safe to do. A behavior that we will hopefully see once Smart Summit and city streets are merged together. That was the end of our navigation route, so I went ahead and selected another random spot on the map. This is another pretty ordinary looking stop sign, but just like before with that right-hand turn on a red light, seems like autopilot is having some trouble proceeding on its own. It says it's creeping for visibility, but the car doesn't actually move forward much at all, even though there are no other vehicles around right now. I waited on this one as long as I could as well. I even tried to give the steering wheel a shake and press the autopilot stalk like last time, but it still wouldn't continue. Then right as the other car enters the intersection, it finally decides to proceed. Don't know exactly what happened here. Maybe it temporarily forgot how to drive until another car showed up or something, I'm really not sure. I hope you guys take my jokes as actual jokes. The larger this channel gets, the more and more I'm afraid to joke around about autopilot's behavior because I've seen so many other beta testers quoted in news articles completely out of context. FSD Beta isn't perfect, but some people try to paint a really negative picture of it, and I just don't want to show up on some FUD article. I have another disengagement up here because I felt like the car was getting a little too close to the curb and put more leftward force on the steering wheel. I looked in my mirror after it happened and it would have cleared the curb by a few inches, so the takeover wasn't really necessary, but it did get closer than I would have. Coming up here, we are approaching the end of our navigation route, which I think ends kind of like in the middle of the road, and since I had traffic behind me, I decided to pull off the road until I can put in another waypoint to make the car drive to. So, the new nav route is in, and when I re-engage autopilot, something pretty interesting happens. The car plans a path around the vehicle in front of us, and it's highlighted in blue, which means it's ready to proceed. But the steering wheel seems to disagree with the path planner and keeps trying to turn to the right, and we end up just staying put. I remember this happening on previous firmware versions, like 2 or 3 of them ago. I don't think it happened much on version 8, but it's interesting that some of these odd little bugs have returned from much older versions. And yet again, the car passing by has reminded autopilot that it's supposed to be driving, and we proceed. This is why I really don't like taking over too soon and kind of just letting the car do what it wants. Sometimes I just feel like autopilot just may need a minute to relax, and it'll just continue when it's ready. Doing a really nice job slowing down and moving over for this pedestrian that's inside the back of their car. Handled it confidently and cautiously. Then coming up, we have a pretty rough intersection where we have to go straight across a couple lanes of traffic with very low visibility. Alright, you guys tell me on this one. Did autopilot do a good job here? How did it know to proceed with such confidence? Do you think it's possible that it looked through that little gap of trees on the right, or do you think maybe it just got lucky? I don't know the answer to that, but autopilot does seem to be consistently proceeding with a lot more confidence in this update. I feel like it's able to get off the line a little quicker in these situations where it has to move into fast-moving traffic. Also seems to be doing a much better job at creeping in general in this update, specifically with not creeping too far into the intersections, and seems to be deciding a pretty good spot of where to stop now. Coming up here, you'll see a few more situations where it's obvious these behaviors have improved a lot, even compared to version 9.0. Even though we drove through this exact same stoplight earlier in this video, unfortunately autopilot mistakes the railroad tracks line for a stop line and stops too far back. And because there was somebody behind me, I ended up disengaging and also pulling off to the side of the road after this stoplight, because I realized that the navigation point was actually a place we've already been to. So I just pulled off into the nearby parking lot, reset the cameras, and chose another navigation point. Another confident move here, pulling into traffic with very little hesitancy. Does swing a little bit too wide and touches the double yellow lines here as well, but nothing crazy enough for me to feel like I had to take over. And next up on ways to stress the beta, we have a pretty confusing double stop sign ahead, where we have another street to our left that has the right-of-way to the second stop sign. We also have an approaching car that's partially obstructed by a parked car off the side of the road. Autopilot creeps through this entire maneuver and correctly gives the car approaching from the rear the right-of-way, then slowly proceeds to the second stop sign. Very, very well done here, I would say. There's more and more of these situations that I put it in where it feels almost like an overly cautious human behind the wheel. Then, of course, because I said autopilot is behaving more humanly, it does something very robotic. We're coming up to a right-hand turn at a red light, and instead of moving to the right of the road to complete the maneuver like a human would, we stay in the middle of our own lane with our right-hand turn signal on. Very robotic indeed. Hopefully hugging the left or the right of the road, depending on which direction you're going, will come in a future software update. We have another fairly tricky intersection ahead, where you have to creep super far forward to get any visibility from each side, and I think this one really demonstrates the new creeping behavior well. This is one of those intersections that's really tricky even for humans, and I think the creeping behavior in this instance literally could not have been any better. It creeps slowly until it had direct line of sight from both sides and then proceeded with confidence. Really can't ask for more than that. Nothing particularly interesting happens in this next segment, minus the awesome visualizations that seem to pick up every parked car it sees, even down side streets, which I think is really cool. Just made our way to the waypoint and then set a new one this time, which is Walgreens. Up here we have another example of the improved creeping behavior around another blind corner. It really does seem to creep far enough until it's able to see both ways before deciding to proceed. But it's not always perfect still. The next intersection we're coming up to is a four-way stop sign, so everybody has to stop here. There's no need to creep into this intersection, and yet that's exactly what autopilot decides to do. And very far, I would add. I hit the little autopilot report button for that one too, just because it's behavior I've never really seen before at a four-way stop sign. Coming up is yet another right turn on red with a blind corner. Seems to be quite a lot of these in Manteca, so autopilot is going to have yet another chance to get creepy. Starts off slow with no creeping at all. I myself would probably be creeping further out here so I could get a good view of traffic, but it is fine with me that the FSD Beta plays it safe for now, and doesn't typically creep when it can see a lot of traffic approaching. Again, can't really ask for more than that. Nice job, FSD Beta. Now, this time, the navigation route is showing that it will actually try to go into the parking lot of Walgreens, so let's see how that goes. Slows down a lot to get up the curb, I really like that. And we do have people behind me, and this says it was basically stopping right here at the end of the navigation route, so I do take over and just go park until I can get one last destination in. It is going to have to exit out of this parking lot and then turn right. Nicely done, especially after it darted out of the last parking lot that I put it into. It's nice to see it's actually looking for traffic when it's coming out of parking lots. So yeah, nice. If you've made it this far into the video, I really hope you're also subscribed because you obviously love this stuff. I debated on whether I should make a video that's this long, but some of the top comments I get are people asking for longer videos. So hopefully this does it for you. And sorry I haven't been uploading as frequently as I'd like. There's been a lot going on, and I really do want to make it a priority to upload more frequently for you guys. Thank you so much for all of your comments and your suggestions and your support. It truly means the world to me. Again here, when we're approaching this stop sign, we're making a left, so we should be hugging the left of the lane, but instead we're right in the center of the lane, and this car has to kind of squeeze in beside us to make this right turn. He's still fit, it was no big deal, you know, he's in a hurry, whatever, but I really wish autopilot would kind of obey the unspoken rules. We are getting towards the end of the nav route and also getting to about the end of my editing abilities and my sanity. It is getting pretty late. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much in this video and talk too much. I think the entire thing looks like I'm talking over it. But anyway, here's the last right turn. Not getting quite as lucky this time with a gap in traffic. Autopilot creeps a little further out for visibility and stops when it sees the car in plenty of time before it started blocking the lane or anything. Then it notices it's stopped and proceeds. And that's it, folks. The end is near. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve these videos, please let me know down below in the comments. I do read all of them. I really do. Thanks again, guys. Bye.